people don't want change to be driven at them.
Yes.
Right. I mean, that whether they agree with the change or not, if they feel like it's being done to them, they're going to be less likely to make sure they help ensure success. My mother passed away of kidney cancer 8 years ago. She was fearless. She was very thoughtful, but unafraid to drive change, to lead. She was a big influence in my life.
Welcome to the Change Agent Podcasts, where we talk about the change that's happening within businesses around the world. Today, I have a fantastic guest. We have Mike Adams, who is the CIO of Brunswick Corporation. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks, Nate. Glad to be here.
Awesome. And I'm Nathan Lesnowski. I'm Concurrency's Chief Technology Officer. So let's get going. Mike, I think everybody wants to know a little bit about who you are. And I see you're wearing a Penn State emblem. I know that you're at least at one point were from the Philadelphia area. So just tell us a little bit who you are and how you got to where you are today.
Sure, be glad to, Nate. So I am indeed originally from the greater Philadelphia area. I am a diehard Eagles fan and 4-for-4 Philadelphia fan. That's a little difficult nowadays, particularly with the NFL season. I'm also a huge Penn State football fan, which is also very difficult here in 2020. I've spent the majority of my career working in IT, infrastructure, but also more so on the customer experience and architecture side of the house. I spent about 15 years at DuPont, which DuPont's headquartered out of Wilmington, Delaware, which is about 35 or so minutes south of Philadelphia. I'm originally from South Jersey, a lovely wife that's northwest of Philadelphia, where she grew up in Pennsylvania. We lived in Delaware, and we have 4 beautiful children. And about 3.5 years ago, I had the opportunity to take the chief architect role with Brunswick in the Chicagoland area, and we've never looked back from there. So I guess when the Bears and the Packers are not playing the Eagles, I tend to root for one or the other as a transplant.
There you go. What's it been like being a transplant in Chicagoland from Philly?
Most people recognize I'm not from the Midwest.
Okay.
Maybe both in personality and I never thought that I had a dialect or an accent, but apparently I do. So most people recognize I'm not a Midwesterner and actually put me somewhere between Boston and Philadelphia, typically. I love it out here. I don't love the winters in the Chicagoland area. They are a little more intense than back home. But I love the people. I love the area. We love the city of Chicago. We've made some trips up to Milwaukee as well. School systems, families doing great out here. So we're really enjoying our time out here in the Midwest in Chicagoland.
Oh, awesome. Now, I know we're going to talk a little bit about the transformation that you've been driving at Brunswick, but I'd love to hear about the activities that you did before you got to Brunswick that prepared you for that change. What would you say are the things that, at your time at DuPont, your time out east, that made you who you are in order to be able to execute on that change that you drove at Brunswick?
Well, it was interesting. I was sort of seen as a change agent at DuPont before I even really drove transformational change more holistically and relied on some of those same change agents. So I spent a lot of time internationally. I actually led a service delivery center implementation in India and actually lived in India, in Hyderabad, in the Gachibowli area, when we were trying to establish a DuPont footprint, not only with third parties, but with actual DuPont employees for a more follow-the-sun approach to infrastructure and application support. I spent a lot of time driving merger and acquisition activity. For those of you that know about DuPont, DuPont's gone through quite a bit of portfolio change just in the last 10 to 12 years. with the divestiture of our coatings business, of our specialty chemicals business, and then the acquisition of Danisco within nutrition and health, and ultimately then the Dow-DuPont merger that resulted in 3 publicly traded companies, Dow, DuPont, and Corteva, the new agroscience business. So there was a lot of change, and I was typically on the top of the list to drive that program transformation. And along the way, really tried to do that and leverage those burning platforms to drive to a more digital landscape and set of capabilities that would actually support that portfolio change. So I think it just became interest in big opportunities to really help transform the business that led to opportunities within the IT organization that have kind of crafted my mindset moving forward on how constant and important change is.
So when you think about what techniques and skills you had that you used to drive that in the larger DuPont organization, what were those qualities? What were the things that you had to, like, apart from just your default personality, your default capabilities, or what were the things you had to kind of build up and lift up to be able to be effective at doing that?
I think there's a couple things, right? I mean, one, it's hard to really drive change from a place of when you don't really have credibility, right, with the audience that you're working with. And I think credibility comes in a lot of ways. Credibility comes with understanding what is in it for them and being able to address what's in it for them. And it also comes with actually delivering against not only a project outcome, but the outcomes and the benefits of said transformation, whether it's portfolio change, whether it's a technology transformation, whether it's an operating model change. And so a real important focus on success criteria and the outcomes, and being able to ensure that you invest and fortify achieving those outcomes is really important. You could have a change mentality and want to drive change, but you're really driving it uphill if you can't, if you're not in a position to establish followership. And the way that you're in a position to establish followership is by establishing credibility, showing that you really care about key stakeholder needs and benefits, and that you see it through in that way, and of course correct and make adjustments along the way where necessary. It's one thing to be called a change agent because you're open to change. Mm-hmm. It's another to be really a leader of change and to really establish that followership through your actions and your focus. And it doesn't come because you demand it to come. It comes really more organically through how you execute.
I think you really hit the nail on the head when you said that you have to care about the stakeholders. I think a lot of people try
Absolutely.
to drive change without that real intentional engagement and to seek to understand the stakeholders before they try to blow it up or transform it.
Absolutely.
And I think you've done a great job of kind of articulating how that's important.
People don't want change to be driven at them.
Yes.
Right. I mean, that whether they agree with the change or not, if they feel like it's being done to them, they're going to be less likely to make sure they help ensure success. If they feel like they're a part of making the change, and that their considerations, again, from a stakeholder standpoint, and their concerns and their needs are being addressed or considered or dialed into a thoughtful approach to driving change, then they're more likely to be advocates. And the good thing about change is once you build the credibility and you go through some successes with these stakeholders, it tends to be a lot easier to get them on board and really broaden that followership.
What would you say is the tension or the right ratio between a change agent having their own understanding of the intentional direction that something needs to go in, and understanding and listening to the group that's sort of getting on the boat with them and going the direction that they're all setting the ship toward? There's sort of that interesting tension between, like, a person that can figure out what that is and define it and set the direction and work toward it, and listen and set the direction based on that. Like, how would you describe that tension and how you've navigated it?
Well, it's interesting. I think whenever whenever particularly from an IT perspective, and this is even beyond DuPont, even in Brunswick, where we've driven change. Whenever we're evaluating or identifying an opportunity to really enable the business, we really have to scale the stakeholdership and try to identify a partner that has very similar objectives or a need, um, that you can almost recruit and work with and partner from a business and IT standpoint. And I relate it to business and IT because that's the majority of what I've been involved in driving change, so that we can start to create wins together. And as you start to create wins, not just as IT driving change, right? We can get in a whole conversation around my point of view regarding app rationalization for the purposes of app rationalization. But when you come at it from a business context of needing to drive digital capability, and have a partner that understands what that digital capability will afford them relative to, let's just say, digital marketing maturity, the ability to better engage consumers more holistically, and you start to drive that change together, even the naysayers start to see some critical mass of success, that gets them more interested in understanding how they can come aboard. So there will always be that spectrum of people that you can partner with to really drive the change, and it's important that you find those one or two change agents and partners at a leadership and sponsorship level, being IT. And then there's going to be the other extreme, which is I'll wait to see how this turns out, and then I'll jump on board. If it's really progressing the way um, that would suggest it's going to be successful and grow. And then there's people in the middle that just need to hear things, maybe multiple times, to really internalize the opportunity, right? And they're not necessarily kind of lagging by design. They just maybe have not related the change to how it can be beneficial to them and their business problems, and they need to see a bit of it. And so what I like to do is not only identify that stakeholder within the business that I can partner with, but also invest in some early successes, that give more confidence and credibility to me in the eyes of that partner, but then also allow us to kind of move things forward, because you're going to have people that are going to be wanting to be a part of that change now that they see the trajectory may be more of a trajectory of success.
That makes
Right. So
sense.
it's really important to identify that change agent and that strategic partner whenever you're looking to drive change. And typically from an IT perspective, that needs to be somebody that's a business stakeholder that's willing to put some skin in the game with you for the good of the enterprise.
Awesome. Well, let's translate that into the work that you're doing at Brunswick. You have executed on some really substantial changes within the organization, movement to the cloud, creating a digital line of business, engaging within the transformative change of how the business even engages its customers, M&A. So how have you translated your ideas on change into Brunswick as you took on the role? And also, how does that relate to, in your mind, where Brunswick is trying to achieve as it transforms its business?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and maybe just to differentiate on a few things. I mean, Brunswick is really focused on product technology, um, customer experiences, and all of this is in a lot of the investors material that's available on Brunswick.com. I think one of the things that I've done in partnership with the business is tried to ensure that our landscape of capabilities is both modernized, extensible, and that we have the competency within IT and the organization to support both the technology and digital aspirations of the business, and where we're looking to kind of grow our business, in areas of other marine participation like boat clubs. For instance, Freedom Boat Club's a big part of our portfolio. Brunswick's not just a boat ownership company anymore. And so a lot of the work that we've had to do, I would say has spanned people, process, and technology. So we've had a bit of portfolio change with the divestiture of Life Fitness. We use that opportunity to not only divest Life Fitness, but to move our company to the cloud and out of some of our data center estates. We've also, and I've also worked very closely with our chief marketing officers within the company to really start to mature our digital experiences, both from a shopping consideration, commerce, and also product and service use standpoint, as we bring more to our consumers and to our value chain partners as well, and do more with our value chain partners. I would say those are two big areas of change that required us to do quite a bit of work, not only in partnership with the business, but within IT, to really drive change into our operating model. We had competencies to build, and we're still building and investing in, and we had work to do and operating models to establish between the business and IT. And so I would say we've done a lot of that over the last 2 to 3 years, particularly positioning ourselves to engage more around digital enablement with the business. And I think we've had some areas of success on the customer experience side, certainly, but also as it relates to some of the new lines of business that we are looking to establish and have established, as well as some of the portfolio change that we've needed to enable to put our businesses in a better position to succeed. But that continues, right? We're very much amidst that journey, and there's still a lot more to come. And I'm really excited about 2021 and 2022. I think we have a great strategy, a great budding partnership with key business stakeholders, both as it relates to value chain, consumer, supply chain type relationships. And I think the change that we've driven has very much been internal to IT, but it's now starting to be in partnership with those business partners as well.
It seems like, especially in the boating world, Brunswick has really positioned itself as a modern boating company, one that facilitates products as well as experiences in the boating space. How has that experience been internally with individuals that may not have seen that vision right away? Where they were sort of like, we sell boats, we sell engines. We're not a app company. We're not a digital company. We're not a digital experience company. Have you had to work through some of those challenges and build that consensus around where Brunswick as a company is going and the part that technology plays in that future?
Yeah, I would say partially. The company and the work that our CEO Dave does and the strategy has been very focused on moving beyond just a product, but we sell great products. We manufacture great products. We have great brands. But I think there's been a recognition within the leadership team and the broader company that strategically we need to be able to ensure that however marine participation is brokered and supported, that we can really help to broker an outstanding experience for people that are both on the water, preparing to be on the water for whatever leisure purposes or recreational purposes. So I think the great thing has been having several really awesome partners within the business that are behind that strategic direction and intent, and it's really fostered, I'll say, an additional reliance on some of the capabilities that we within IT can bring to the table, and a willingness to partner. Um, I have very close relationships with my peers. I mentioned, our chief marketing officers, but also do quite a bit of work with our product engineering teams. And I would say one of the big areas we've been successful in with Brunswick is a recognition that we are going to have engineering competency, digital marketing competency, pure digital competency, cloud competency, and that we really want to bring the best minds together, design thinking competency, new business model competency, um, to figure out how we holistically not only offer great products and services, but how we deliver them through world-class experiences. We understand that the key to our products and services and their use, and how they're viewed by our customers and our consumers, is very much based on a much broader experience than once you're on a boat or once you're operating a boat. That's part of the experience and an important, critical part of the experience. So I don't know that there's been much selling of that. I mean, we're working through how we can organize more efficiently and effectively to deliver those experiences. But I think everybody is very much aligned with that vision.
Awesome. I know one of the changes that you mentioned was when you went through the M&A activity with Life Fitness and spun them off, but you used that activity as an opportunity to be able to modernize a lot of the infrastructure and platform that you're using now to be able to execute on your digital capability journey. Can you talk a little bit about the process of transforming your team along with that journey? There's a significant number of individuals in the technology org, whether it's in the business or in the IT organization itself. And sometimes that transformation could be one of the more challenging or interesting parts. Talk a little bit about like what you did to enable that and to get success out of that part of the business.
Yeah, and that's where I referred to earlier that a lot of the transformation we did, we almost had to do inside out first, right? So when you think about the IT organization, I truly believe we have a world-class IT organization. And as we moved to the cloud and as we leveraged really that burning platform, because just a little context here, one of our data centers that supported our DR and lower environment or non-prod environments was a Life Fitness factory. So obviously when we divested Life Fitness, that was going to go with Life Fitness. So we had to reinstantiate the production path, our DR, and we ultimately decided to do that in Azure and in Oracle Cloud Infrastructure for our EBS environments, or Enterprise Business Suite environments for Oracle ERP. We didn't have people that were cloud experts, right? And there was a learning curve there. And one of the things that we did and we strategically decided to do was to bring in third parties that not only helped us with that journey for both Life Fitness and Brunswick, but also would help us build our competency internally to sustain and optimize our consumption of cloud services, one of which was your company, Concurrency, who did an outstanding job with us on the Azure side. And from that, what we've been able to do, at least in this space, I know we still have a strong partnership, Nate, but in this space is we were able to build a cloud engineering team that now largely manages the resources, the templating, the software orchestration, the automation, monitoring of all of our cloud assets, infrastructure as a service and platform as a service across Azure and Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. And that took just as much effort and time and deliberate action as the move itself to the cloud, right? Is building that competency. And now we have as part of a world-class IT organization, a world-class cloud engineering and automation organization. And that clearly didn't happen overnight. That was a 12, 18-month journey, and it's a journey that continues as we look to exploit more and more from those cloud environments.
I remember the first starts of that conversation, and there's a little bit of, you want us to do what? And I love where the team has arrived today, because it truly is a transformation of who they are and how they engage in the business. So you should feel very proud of them.
Oh, I'm tremendously proud of the organization. The other thing is, just like you mentioned, let's not act like Brunswick IT was throwing roses at the feet of concurrency, right? I mean, there's always a bit of suspicion when you have third parties come in, but this gets back to credibility and driving change, right? The messaging was always clear. This is to augment our team, to support our team in this separation and move to the cloud. But the competency and the core competency needs to remain within Brunswick. And we did that. And the follow through was there. The trust was built. The credibility now exists within the IT organization. And when we have conversations of transformation moving forward, it becomes a much easier conversation, because you're coming from a place of not only trust, but credibility, and they know that what you say is what you intend to do. So a lot of great outcomes, I think, to the benefit of the organization from that effort.
Mm-hmm. That's when people ask me about you, one of the things that I often tell them is what he says he's going to do is what he does. And I think there's few other compliments that you can give a person than something like that, because that's really just goes straight to credibility, that you are who you say you are.
I try that is very much the way I was brought up, and it's just the only way that I know how to be. Some people like that, some people don't. Sometimes it manages. Sometimes it depends on what the message is.
Yeah, exactly.
As to whether they'll like it or not. But certainly appreciate that, and it's something that it would be unnatural for me to act differently, but honestly.
All right, last question, Mike.
Okay, great.
What is something or someone that has inspired you to be the change agent you are today?
I'll give you two people. One is Danny Brown. So Danny Brown is currently the CIO of Whirlpool, was formerly the CIO of Brunswick here just several months ago. I've worked with Danny since the time I was in DuPont, and Danny was always in the middle of the biggest transformational things. And by virtue of that, and our partnership and how close we work together, I was always involved in some of the bigger transformational things. And I think she's just taught me a lot about the consistency of change, right? Change will always be there. And there will always be points of time where uncertainty and a level of discomfort will exist. But generally speaking, you have to learn to be comfortable with change, because it's not going anywhere. And certainly 2020 has maybe taught us a lesson about that. So I continue to stay in touch with Danny. She's going to do great things at Whirlpool. And she's been a mentor and a sponsor for me over the last 12 to 15 years. The other I would say is my mother. My mother passed away of kidney cancer 8 years ago. And if you knew my dad and my mother, you'd know my personality is maybe more rooted to my mother than anybody else. And she was a very ambitious person. She herself worked for DuPont. That's actually one of the ways that I was given the opportunity to intern and do things at DuPont before I started my career there. She was fearless. She was very thoughtful, but unafraid to drive change, to lead, whether the positions were, popular at the time or not. She was a big influence in my life, and remains always in my mind when I think about big things that need to happen. And I would say when I was at inflection points in my career, I thought about whether I would take on opportunities, recognizing that opportunities always come with an element of risk. And I always thought of her for multiple reasons, but more often than not, it was a motivator for me to say, yeah, I'm going to take on this opportunity. I can do it. And it's very much rooted in my personality and a lot of the learnings, messages, and influence that I've had from my mother growing up. So those are the two, I would say. There are many more people that helped me throughout my career. But I think the way I've evolved as a leader and my perspective on things very much was influenced by those two individuals.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, Mike. And especially thank you for being a guest today. So many interesting insights from your time at both DuPont and Brunswick, and also you're talking about what makes you you. So we really appreciate your time. And for all our guests, thank you for joining us on Change Engine Podcast. We will see you next time.
Great. Thanks, Nate.
Thank you.